Welcome everyone to Empower You 2024. We are very lucky to have our first speaker, Dr. Saar Anis. He is our Cleveland Clinic fellow, and he's going to discuss the latest and greatest in Parkinson's research, which I know is a huge interest of many. I get this question very often. So here is Dr. Anis.
Okay, hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm actually very excited today. First of all, because my life goal is to provide care and advance research for Parkinson's. And I feel today that this is a great opportunity to see many people, to try to help and educate, in this topic, which is of a great interest to me, which is research. So I hope today I can just give you some information. But my main goal is to give you an overview of the latest and greatest in Parkinson's research. So again, my name is Saar, and I'm a fellow for movement disorders at the Center for Neurological Restoration in Cleveland. Before I begin, I would like to disclose something. So first of all, I have no relevant financial or non-financial interests to disclose. And secondly, and most importantly, I'm speaking from my own experience and perspective without any endorsement from or any support from market companies. I will provide you with some pharmaceutical studies, but it is important for me to say that my intention is not to endorse them, these ones over others, which I will not present. Okay, I'm just giving some examples. But research is so vast, so I cannot show you all the studies going on, but I will try to focus on a few. So can you still hear me? Yeah, I'll try to set off the stage a bit. And so actually I want to cover two topics today. The first topic would be, what are the research directions that this field is going to? We're talking about different types of studies, but actually this field of Parkinson's is heading towards some directions. And today, that's what I want to tell you about. And also, since I'm from the Center for Neurological Restoration, we have some studies going on there. And I would like to present you some. If you're interested, we have a booth outside. So after this talk, you can approach the booth and get some more information. So generally, there are two types of studies, right? The first type is symptomatic. And, I always give the same example. If you have a headache and you take Tylenol, this is symptomatic therapy. We're not treating the cause of the headache. We're treating the headache. The same for Parkinson's. There's another type of studies. The second type is disease modifying. And for me, those are the most inspiring, right? Because, it's very important to address symptoms. We want to improve quality of life. But our endpoint is to slow disease progression. So this is the second type, disease modifying. And this is a big topic. Another question which I get a lot from people, and this is the biggest question: can we find a cure? Right? So interestingly enough, I went to the website of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and a great organization. And look what is on the front page. Our single urgent goal: eliminate Parkinson's in our lifetime. This is, of course, sounds imaginary. But I'll try to prove you today that we're going towards there. The Michael J. Fox Foundation have already invested more than $1 billion for research. And it's not only not only Michael J. Fox. We have great organizations like the Parkinson's Foundation, APDA, the association, and also the NIH, who's providing us investigators, physicians, with a lot of support in order to execute great studies. Do any of you know Alzheimer's disease? Everyone knows Alzheimer's disease. This is a neurodegenerative disease that causes dementia. And in Alzheimer's disease, there is a protein aggregating in the brain, which is called tau. And when it aggregates, it forms plaques. Those plaques are called amyloid plaques. And you know what? Parkinson's is also a neurodegenerative disease with a protein aggregating in the brain and the body. And you know the name of this protein? Alpha-synuclein. So there is some similarities between those diseases. So recently, 3 new FDA-approved drugs for Alzheimer's to slow progression of disease. We still don't have that in Parkinson's, but it's possible. FDA approved. Those medications can slow cognitive and functional decline by up to 35%. Just think about it if we'll have that for Parkinson's. That will be amazing. Those medications, what they're doing is actually antibodies. They're reducing the aggregation of this protein. So I'm showing you that for inspiration, because we're trying to do the same for Parkinson's. And if it was done for Alzheimer's, it will be done for Parkinson's. Another important thing I want to show you today is this complicated graph. So there is a shift in the paradigm of how we see Parkinson's. Because nowadays, us providers, you know how we diagnose the disease. We see a patient. He comes with slowness, tremor, problems with the sense of smell, constipation. Then we say, okay, it looks like Parkinson's. But now, in the last few years, research has found that the alpha-synuclein is actually aggregating years before the symptom onset. Sometimes 10 years before, 15 years before. And we have a test today that can find it, this protein. So this gives us, so you see it here in gray, this is where currently we're diagnosing the disease. But now we can diagnose it here. So it gives us a window, an important window to intervene. Of course, we can intervene here and actually here. This is the timeline. But as I see the future, we're going to look for, to diagnose it earlier. And then if we'll have those medications that we're dreaming about, we can actually postpone the outbreak of the disease and maybe prevent it. Again, this is an aspiration, but this is something we're heading to. It's a biomarker. It's a biomarker. It's actually alpha-synuclein, which has, it's an alpha-synuclein that we find. So, before I gave this talk, I thought, I have to look out. What's going on? How many studies we have? Each study for a medication, for any type of disease today, could cost up to $1 billion because a drug trial is expensive and hard. And I was amazed to see that during 2024, there are active 136 active interventional trials. I'm not just talking about any trial. We have thousands of trials. But interventional trials, 136 new potential medications to address Parkinson's, which is pretty amazing. And this is a nice graph or figure that shows two types I showed you before. So in the upper part, you can see disease-modifying therapies. And each box is a drug trial. And on the bottom, you can see the symptomatic therapies. And on the right side, it's just hard to see. I will address that later. There are a few targets that we're heading to. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. What are those targets in the 2024 pipeline? So I have looked and found that the most, 5 different targets had the most trials in it. So 60 disease-modifying drugs. 60 on the pipeline, which is good. It's not bad. And I told you, each one is a big one. So out of those 60, 14 studies were related to genetics. And this is a subject which is very close to me, genetics. And 14 of those drugs are trying to address genetic mutations, which I will touch later. 9 studies are addressing alpha-synuclein aggregation. The same as I showed you in Alzheimer's. We're aiming to locate this protein and try to reduce it. We cannot be certain that if we can reduce the alpha-synuclein, the symptoms will get better, because we're not sure the alpha-synuclein is the culprit. It actually might be just there as a marker, but does not cause the symptoms. But we're trying. It works in Alzheimer's. I hope it will work for Parkinson's. Another target is inflammation. We know that in Parkinson's, there's also inflammation in the brain. Okay, and if we can reduce this inflammation, we might improve or slow the progression. Another interesting target is the GLP-1 receptor agonist, which actually a drug for diabetes. It's a family of drugs for diabetes already approved. And interestingly, we realize that those medications penetrate to the brain and they are neuroprotective. They protect neurons. So now big companies doing huge effort to provide those medications which are already approved to patients to see if it can slow the progression. I think it's exciting because it's already approved and because we know the profile. We know the side effects, so it will be easier to provide. The 5th target is actually, I think, the sexiest. Stem cell therapy. Stem cell, right? Super sexy. What we're thinking about, we know that in Parkinson's, one of the things we lack most is dopamine. So just think about it. If we could provide, for many years, and I was part of this research as well, we can take skin cells, transform them to dopamine-producing neural cells. We can do that in the lab. We can easily do that. But now they're actually taking those cells, injecting it to the brains of patients. It sounds like science fiction, but we're implanting leads, right, for DBS. Why not to put on these leads some cells? So it's not that easy, but there are ongoing studies in the US for that. So let's start talking about all those. So you see on the right this pie, which represents which target I'm talking about. And I would like to start with alpha-synuclein. I cannot cover all the studies which are going on right now. It's just impossible. So I'm going to give just a few examples. The first example is the Orchestra trial by UCB. The Orchestra trial is an 18-month study to evaluate the efficacy of an oral drug given orally. And this small molecule, what it does, it stops the alpha-synuclein from aggregate, from misfolding. And hopefully, if we can stop it from misfolding, it will not aggregate, so it will reduce the burden of alpha-synuclein. Again, this is our vision. And it is in the US. It's ongoing. Phase 2. Interesting stuff. There is another study in Europe going on in UK, Spain, Germany. And look at that. It's a vaccine for Parkinson's. Again, it sounds like science fiction, but we're injecting and we're training our immune system to fight alpha-synuclein. Hopefully, it works in rats. Hopefully, it will work in people. So we're injecting this vaccine like other vaccines, and hopefully, it will slow the progression of disease. This is ongoing by AC Immune. It's called the vaccine study. How nice. Okay, shifting gears, genetics. There is a new release publication from last month from 2 different parts of the world, from America and from Europe, about the genetics of a lot of Parkinson's patients. Apparently, we all think it's not a genetic disease. Most of the patients do not have a mutation that caused the disease. But we were pretty astonished to realize that about up to 10% of people with Parkinson's are carrying a specific genetic mutations in the GBA1 gene. And this mutation predisposing the disease itself. So if we can target this gene mutation, if we can rectify what it does, we might, first of all, help the patients who are already got the disease. But we also can, help their children, not having the disease, if we can catch it soon enough. So the GBA1 mutation is actually increasing the risk for Parkinson's by 20 to 30-fold. So healthy people who have this mutation are at increased risk. What is this GBA1 mutation is doing? So it mainly doing some problems in the intracellular level. The bottom line, so it does some neuroinflammation, causes intracellular stress to all the cells of our body. But the ones who suffer the most are the dopamine-producing ones. At the end of the day, we get alpha-synuclein aggregation. There is a US trial ongoing from Bial. It's called Activate. This study activates GBA since the enzyme which is mutated is not working properly. So this medication tried to boost it so it will function better and hopefully will improve or at least slow the disease progression. And maybe if we'll give it early enough for carriers of this mutation, they will never have Parkinson's. So this is ongoing. GBA is the most common genetic mutation for Parkinson's. But there is another interesting gene called the LRRK2 gene. Again, the LRRK2 gene is responsible or associated with the garbage can of the cell, the one that's supposed to break down unwanted molecules. But when the LRRK2 is not working well, the enzyme, our cells are just explodes with alpha-synuclein. And if a person have a LRRK2 mutation, and it's not uncommon, 2.1% of Parkinson's patients has this mutation. And believe it or not, Ashkenazi Jewish, 15%. North African Arabs, 35% of people with Parkinson's carry this mutation. So this mutation is big. The LUMA trial. The LUMA trial is a trial to address this gene mutation. As opposed to the GBA1, which has dysfunctional activity, this protein, the LRRK2 is actually working too hard, too much. We want to reduce its role. So the LUMA trial, doing by Biogen and Denali, is giving a small oral molecule to reduce LRRK2, lower its activity. And hopefully, by lowering its activity, again, we're going to reduce the burden, the cell burden, and hopefully slow the progression. So what I like about this study, which is ongoing, is that we provide this molecule not to all patients, not only the 2.1% with LRRK2, to all patients. This is just, who is eligible, you can find who's eligible, but it's actually for the early onset, not the early onset, sorry, for people with early stage disease before they started any kind of treatment. Because this company is trying to find, the early stage and intervene. Hopefully, if this will work, we can provide it to people with more advanced disease. Because we believe that this LRRK2 is bothersome not only for the people with the mutation, but also for all patients. This is the theory. Okay. We have 7 minutes left, and we're great on time. We're advancing to stem cell therapy. So, again, for me, it looks like science fiction, but it's actually happening. We are currently injecting stem cells into the brains of Parkinson's patients. But especially, as you can see in the figure here, to the nuclei within the brain, the deep nuclei where we put the DBS leads in, there are numerous studies throughout the world. I checked, not only in the US, Asia, Europe. Everyone is trying to see what will happen if we're injecting those stem cells producing dopamine, long term. It will take a few years, but we will have that. Hopefully next year we can give you an update. What's going on with that? Because we are, as opposed to other fields like Alzheimer's, we are invasive. We are we're putting leads within the brains already for years. So why not just add that? So I think this is exciting. Okay. So I have presented you with the 5 biggest targets: the alpha-synuclein, genetics, stem cells, inflammation, diabetes drugs. But I want to show you in the 5 last minutes that we in the Center for Neurological Restoration are doing amazing work, amazing studies, both observational and interventional, in trying to help patients, both for the symptoms, but also for, disease progression. So just highlights our observational study. So observational means we don't give any type of medication or device. We're just collecting data to improve care. Just to highlight, PD generation. PD generation is an amazing initiative. It's all, the aim of this initiative is to get the genetics, sequence the genetics of all Parkinson's patients. Why? I told you why. Because if we know the genetics, we might, say, oh, you have GBA1 mutation. Why don't you try this trial? Oh, you have a LRRK2 mutation. Why don't you try this trial? Or any other mutation. So PD generation is a free genetic sequencing. And already they got 15,000 patients. They just published that. And you know what? 12.7% had genetic mutations. I think it's huge. Again, I think it's huge. 12.7% of people with Parkinson's in America has a genetic mutation that causes Parkinson. And we need, this is important information. We also have the CART study. And Ryan is here from the J. Albert's lab. So this is an augmented reality study where we explore the movement, and we're trying to quantify movement in order to be better in understanding the disease, addressing the symptoms. And if anyone is interested about all these studies I'm talking about, we have a booth, both for the J. Alberts and Ryan study, and both for CNR, Center for Neural Restoration. You can approach the booth and ask. Okay, so some interventional studies to highlight. So I was talking about disease-modifying trials, but we also have trials for people with more advanced disease who suffer from wearing off levodopa. One of them is the Atlantis study. There is a new small molecule trying to prolong dopamine activation, so to give you some more benefit for a longer time, so the drugs will wear off less. And this is the Atlantis study. This is a molecule which is a dopamine agonist trying to help dopamine activity in the brain. We also have the CAN-DO trial. The CAN-DO trial is actually trying to answer a question we always have. Should we add an add-on to levodopa, or should we try to keep the regimen of medication at the exact times? Because sometimes we forget. Sometimes we take the medication later than we were supposed to. But if we can take it the exact time we should, and we're going to compare that to an add-on medication. And I think it's interesting for us providers to know whether we shouldn't just add a medication. We should look out for the patient and see if he's taking, or her, or she's taking the meds at the right time. And this study, this is what we're going to do. And hopefully we can better understand. And TAME-PD, so this is another study that we're doing. First of all, our goal, let me just jump here. The TAME-PD is for patients who want to improve their gait, their walking. And we're comparing physiotherapy alone in the Center for Neurological Restoration, close to the main campus. We have a facility for physiotherapy, for Parkinson's. And the other arm would be to add physiotherapy and a medication, and to see what is better to improve gait. And this is an excellent opportunity. So, last minute. Thank you all, first of all, for listening. And if you want more information about all these exciting things, I think Julia is here. Julia? Yeah, Julia is here. Julia is our recruitment specialist. Can you believe it? The Cleveland Clinic has a recruitment specialist. This is amazing. She will address any questions that you will have about any study, and we have a lot. So if one of you is interested to contribute to himself, to herself, or to the great endeavor that we're all trying to do, just call Julia. And yeah, this is exciting. Thank you so much for listening. We have the booth. You can reach out to us if you want. Thank you so much.